Hi, I'm George Nordhaus, and welcome to Monday Morning. Now we're going to get a little deep into things here because it's vital that agencies really understand where in the heck they're going and what kind of strategies that they can put together and so forth. And for me to get this one done, I went to Donna Galer. She's been our presenter a couple of times. I would say, a risk management consultant, risk management with Hanover Stone Solutions. We'll tell you more about them sometime too. But Donna has quite a background. She's got her top-selling book, and that's Enterprise Risk Management. Came out in 2013. It's very, very nice to have in an agency because you kind of need to know of it. She was with Zurich for a long, long time. Let's see, were you in Switzerland? Where'd you live then?
Well, I was with them in Switzerland, but also in New York and in Schaumburg.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, and you started Crum & Forster then when you first came in, huh? How about that?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's been fun to deal with you because you're kind of out of the ordinary from the standpoint of what we normally deal with on these things, because you talk to agents and everything else, but here we've got a consultant who's been around the world and understands what it's all about. Tell me what we're going to be talking about, Donna. Let's talk about what's the objective.
Well, the objective of this presentation is to talk about what are the key components of a strategic plan and how an agency could think about each of those components. I'm not going to try to talk about actually the details of what goes into one, although I do have some examples.
All right. I think that's good. So let's talk about your strategy.
All right. So the first question that agency management should ask, or probably do ask, is why have a strategy at all? And I think the answer to that question is that it does tend to energize the agency staff. It shows them that everyone believes there is a positive future for the agency. And certainly the age-old answer to why have a strategy is that it provides a roadmap for building the future agency. Another reason is because it serves as a reference point for all the decision-making and choices that happen on a day-to-day basis. You know, should we investigate this, acquiring this other agency or not? Well, the strategic plan should provide part of that answer. Should we invest in a second office location? Again, the strategy should be the reference point for looking at you know, how to answer that question. And then, of course, bottom line is it is an expected part of good governance to have a strategic plan.
Well, yeah, I've worked with businesses, and I've watched a lot of agencies that just don't have a plan, and it's just, I mean, it's frustrating, I think, to everybody that works in and around about if they don't have a strategy. So I like these points here. Okay, let's go down the list here.
Okay, so once you've decided to have a strategic plan, you need to think about what goes into it. And so there are 10 key points, and we're going to talk about each one, so I won't read them off now.
Okay.
But I also want to make one other point here on this slide, George, and that is that these are kind of the content elements that have to be discussed, but then they also have to be accompanied by some financial goals and objectives, which I'm not going to deal with in today's presentation, but of course after you have the strategy written, you do have to put together some specific goals in terms of you know, what is the top line revenue we're shooting for in the next 3 to 5 years, what is the margin we're shooting for, etc.
Good. Like it. All right. Well, good. Let's start the list.
Okay. So there are 3 things that we talk about that start a strategic plan, and that is the vision, the mission, and the core values. Now, over time, companies have decided that maybe the vision is too much work because it's very difficult to frame a vision. Some companies have abandoned both vision and mission and have gone straight and only to core values. But let's talk about each of these, and an agency can decide whether they want to have all three components or if they want to choose one or the other of them. So what is a vision statement? It is a statement that expresses the essence of a company or an organization in a very succinct but descriptive way. And I've included some examples. So, for example, Amazon says, our vision is to be the Earth's most customer-centric company and to build a place where people can come to find and discover anything they might want to buy online.
Boy,
So it is,
they're successful.
it's grandiose.
Aren't they great?
Yeah.
Oh, man, it's scary. God.
So maybe the vision helped them. I don't know.
Oh,
But
man, it had to.
It's a grandiose statement, but it does make it very clear what is their essence. Their essence is to be able to provide anything a customer might want to buy online. So I also have one here from an insurance agency that was online. They made it public, and that's the Pekin Agency. They said, our vision is to set the standard of excellence among insurance providers by being innovative, being financially strong, and exceeding customer expectations. We will attract and retain the very best employees and agents to help us achieve this goal.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, again, none of these are terribly long, and they try to get right to the essence of the company. I love Habitat, a world where everyone has a decent place to live. Is there any confusion?
Oh, I love that too, and what they're doing. Every time I see one of those things, I'm proud. I'm proud of the world. It's a beautiful thing, and they're succeeding. You know.
Yeah, yeah. So a mission statement takes the vision statement kind of one step more in terms of detail. Mission statements define what a company does. It often mentions the products and the geographies that the company is into. By inference, it defines what the company does not do, and sometimes that has great value because it tells employees and all the stakeholders, you know, we do this, but we're not going to do that, and so it sets some parameters for the company. So, for example, Payne West Insurance is, our mission is to be the premier provider of unique solutions and service for insurance, surety, and employee benefits. The employer of choice in every location we operate, a meaningful contributing partner to the communities we serve.
Beautiful. Well,
so by inference, it's saying, yeah, exactly. By inference, it's saying, you know, we're not doing real estate, we're not doing, you know, some other kind of line of business. These are the lines of business we're in, and we want to be premier at those, and we want to be an employer of choice and a contributing member to the community. So, again, this is this can become much more granular than the vision statement, which is a little bit more grandiose or encompassing. Let's move to the values.
I will, but just a minute. Let me just 1 second. I want to say something. No. When I saw this Audubon, I don't hear that very often. And I grew up in southern Indiana, but across the bridge in Henderson, Kentucky, is Audubon Park, and all of our it's fantastic. I didn't even know that. I hadn't heard this word for years and years. And it is birds, wildlife, and so forth. We used to go there. That was our favorite place of all the world. You ever heard of it? I bet you haven't. Nobody else has.
No.
Well, it's there. So you picked the right one. Okay, good for you. Core values.
Okay, so core values represent the most important characteristics of an organization, which are meant to guide the behavior of the people in that organization. And I've listed a few examples here. And you'll notice that the top one of each of them, although integrity becomes honesty for Bright Horizons, which is a daycare provider, but there's the top one has something to do with integrity, honesty, being really a truthful or trustworthy kind of organization. But these core values are exactly what should drive the behavior of the people in those organizations. And as I said, many companies now have chosen to dispense with vision, to dispense with mission, and they go to core values because they think that's the most important thing that they need to express the essence of their company.
That's amazing.
But in any case,
amazing to me. I didn't, and they just, well, the fact that they're jumping into that without the mission is, I mean, you mix all three of these, and it's a great mix. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't.
Yeah, I mean, all three. No, that's fine, George. It's just, you know, it's nice to have all three, but as I said, there tended to be this agonizing and very long process to come up with a vision statement, and people finally said it's just not worth it because we've spent, you know, hours upon hours of wordsmithing. So they go right to core values, and it seems to work. But whatever makes the agency comfortable is a good way to go. And we'll move now to the next component of the strategy, and that is, what is the agency's value proposition and differentiation? How can we explain that in the strategy so that we can strive to achieve it? And I've got two examples here. Example A is an agency that says, okay, I'm going to build my value proposition and differentiation around the fact that I'm a niche player. And that could be by industry segment for commercial lines. It could be by profession for personal lines. But so I'm going to be a niche player, and I'm going to therefore become very expert at that particular industry segment. I'm going to tailor any added value services that I offer around that segment, and I am going to choose the markets, the carriers that have the best-in-class solutions for those for that industry segment. So by becoming a niche player, I build my value proposition, the differentiation around that.
Right. All right.
Example B is an agency that says, okay, I'm going to build my value proposition or differentiation around becoming a high efficiency player. And what that means to me then, or what that means to my customers, is that I'm going to be probably very tech savvy. I'm going to have very, very quick customer service responses in whatever form the customer wants, whether they want to have it on their phone, whether they want to have it on their computer, whether they want to have in-person kinds of service solutions. And I'm probably going to also be perceived as low cost or more innovative if I'm a high efficiency player. So that's how my customers are probably going to view me, and those are the kinds of customers I'm going to attract. So the key point is that an agency needs to figure out what is it that is going to be their value proposition, because that's going to have to dovetail or create, actually, it creates their brand in many ways, or at least it has to be in sync with their brand. But it's a key component of the strategy.
Right.
So now let's talk a little bit about a SWOT analysis, because that's the next key component of any strategic plan you'll find, and that is where you take a look at the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats to the agency. What do I do best? What do I do well? What are the things, what are the areas that I'm not doing so well at? And so one builds on their strengths, and one fixes their weaknesses. But you also look at the opportunities and threats, and so of course you have to capitalize on the opportunities and ameliorate the threats. And when, you know, companies always did SWOT analysis when they were doing strategies. And then as risk management, or as enterprise risk management, started to become more prevalent in the past 20 years, it became clear that very often the threats that were identified as part of the SWOT analysis in strategic planning worked, became really the fodder for the risks or the identification of risks that you look for as part of your enterprise risk management.
I want to interrupt you again because enterprise risk management, for those of you who don't really know what it is, and I think a lot of people don't, and I'm not going to tell you what it is because that's her. But the interview that you and I did some time ago on enterprise risk management, I thought was totally revealing because I never thought of enterprise. We always think of risk management per se, but the enterprise risk management concept is phenomenal. So let me just tell agents here, anybody listening, go back to go to our list of Monday mornings, and you can get on. It's on Agencies Online, and listen to her presentation on it. I thought it was terrific. You are, or better yet, get the book, don't you think? Okay, go ahead. Get the book. Get the book. Okay. Go ahead.
Thanks for the plug, George.
That's all right.
So, there may be other, of course, risks that you identify as part of your ERM process, but certainly the threats that you identify in doing the strategy become part of your risk register.
Okay.
And the idea is to identify and prioritize those risks and then do sub-plans to mitigate those risks. Let's take a look then at this slide that you have up there, this illustrative macro key risks for insurance agencies. So if an agency were doing their list of threats, it's very likely that you're going to see something about direct sales by carriers. You're going to see something about online aggregators, about the commoditization of the insurance product. You may see something about automobile transformation as a risk. You know, what is going to happen to auto policies. And economic stagnation would likely be a macro risk that many agencies are facing. And I should say that if any agency hasn't seen the report that came out by Accenture at the beginning of 2016, they did a survey of more than 1,100 U.S. independent agents, and what they found was that this one that I have first here, the direct sales by carriers, 39% of the respondents said it was their greatest source of competition and their greatest risk. 71% of that 39% said that the risk takes the form of lower prices.
Of course.
And 48% said the risk takes the form of better brand recognition. So that should give agents a clue as to areas that their strategy needs to address if their strategy hasn't addressed it. So how to get competitive prices and how to get better brand recognition. So let's take a look now at more detailed risks that an agency might have. These are illustrative, unique risks for these are below macro. These are micro things that might affect an agency. It could be changing demographics in the territories they serve. Maybe the area that they operate in is becoming more commercial and less residential, and so they have to focus more on the commercial lines. Maybe their population is aging, and so they need to think more in terms of the products that an older group of personal lines customers have. So it could be, again, changing demographics that creates the risk for them. It could be changing buying habits among the customers they serve. Maybe their customer population is more inclined to online sales, and that is a risk for them. Of course, maybe they are particularly subject to increased costs to run their business, or to a lack of available talent, or to some reputational debacle. You know, it could be, the agency is not doing anything wrong, but some, one of their customers is an insured that gets denied a claim and takes that all the way up to the Supreme Court. Well, the agency gets some reputational damage out of that, even though they did nothing wrong, right? So that is a real risk that many agencies have to be concerned about.
I hear you saying really that the agents need to understand the unique risks for their agency.
Exactly. Absolutely, George. And that has to be, again, you can't have a good strategy unless you're recognizing what those risks are and you build some mitigation strategies or some mitigation tactics into your overall strategy.
All right.
Okay, so now we're on to another element, another major element of your strategic, and that is to think about and to plan around what are your product offerings going to be. You can't possibly offer everything under the sun, right? Or most likely you can't. So, but one of the questions you have to ask and answer in the strategy is, does my agency offer enough product breadth? Are there products missing from the portfolio that we need to build some expertise on and develop a relationship with a carrier that can provide that? Are there non-insurance products that should be added or service offerings that should be added to my product portfolio? So the strategy needs to answer that question. Does the agency offer the most differentiated products within each of the product categories that it does offer? And does the agency staff know how to sell that differentiation? So there's a differentiation factor for the agency overall, and then there needs to be some differentiation in terms of the products that get offered. So another question that the agency has to ask is, does my agency offer all relevant and differentiated services? So that's where that element of consultation comes in. Now, another thing that was talked about in that Accenture study that I mentioned was added services. And apparently the responses from those in that survey, they kind of said agents were not really particularly interested in added services for the most part. They didn't feel that it offered enough for their clients. They were more interested in better brand recognition and improved customer experiences, but not additional products. And yet, that is a form of differentiation. And if depending on what kind of customer population they have, it may be very important, certainly to commercial customers, for example, to get some added value services. So they need to think about it. Yeah, they need to think hard about it.
All right.
So the next element of your strategy has to be deciding who are your customer segments. Now, some agencies may say, I want to serve any and all who I can sell to. And that's okay. I mean, that is a strategy that can be employed and it can be successful for some agents. But I think customer segmentation has been proven to be a highly effective strategy. And looking here at two examples, the first one, if we go back one slide, George, the first one is built on a personal lines example. So, the agency may say, okay, I want to absolutely target librarians. I mean, this is, again, just an example. But we know that there aren't that many librarians in the world, right? I mean, that's very finite. So you need to, as you build or as you identify customer segments, you need to build kind of a multi-layered approach to that, a multi-layered bullseye. So it may be librarians are your top target, but teachers are a related target, and school personnel are another related target. And so your strategy needs to reflect that so that your producers know who you want to go after.
Okay.
And of course, what that does is it allows you to become more expert. So in this example, we're using more of a commercial, small business commercial example. If your target is landscaping businesses, what's the next layer in that target? It could be retail garden centers. What's the next layer? It could be tree nurseries, tree farms, and plant nurseries. But again, it's an important element of your strategy for your producers to know, who am I going after? And as you become more familiar with those segments, you become more knowledgeable, you build loyalty, and you build referrals.
Got it. Got it. All right.
Okay, we're going to talk next about geographic spread, because this is another key component of the agency strategy. It's one small element perhaps, but it's an important one. What's happening in the scope of my operations? Do I have a large enough general population in my territory to get me to the revenue goals that I'm trying to meet? And if not, do I need to expand into new counties? Do I need to become more of a regional player, a regional broker, because I can't do it within the confines of being a one state or a two county
right.
agency? Or does it mean that my geographic spread is okay, but I need to add additional customer segments if I'm going to reach my goals?
Got it.
So geographic spread, again, is just one element. Now, carrier selection. That's another very key element to the agency strategy. And I start by looking at this study, which I guess most of your listeners are familiar with, but it's important because it creates context. According to the 2015 market share study from the IIABA, it showed that the entire PC market, nearly 50% of all premiums is still in the hands of independent agents. They write 35% of all personal lines and still dominate commercial, writing nearly 80%.
Mm-hmm.
So I say that, and I put that here first for context, because I wouldn't want any agency to feel as though they were powerless in the face of a very large, a giant carrier, okay? They're important. Agents are important. Okay, so we'll go on to the next slide. So it's up to the agent to pick who their trading partners are going to be, who their carriers are going to be. And I've just listed here some illustrative criteria, because, again, the agent should feel as though they're in the power seat. The companies need them every bit as much as they need the companies. So some possible criteria are, of course, what are their ratings? What products do they offer? How good are they at getting back to the agency in terms of underwriting decisions, certificates of insurance, whatever the area might be? Are they consistent in their underwriting decisions, or do they go all over the place and you never know what's going to happen to an application that you send in, because one day they want something and the next day they don't want that class of business? It's maddening, right? It wastes time. Does the company have rating structures that are sufficiently competitive? Do they deliver good claim service? Do they offer up-to-date technological support? The next page, we have a few more. Do they keep their own turnover in check? Or are you always dealing with a different underwriter? How do they compensate their agents? Big one, right? Do they provide marketing support? Do they visit your agency personally? Do they provide training? Do they support your charitable giving through their own foundations? Is there a way to get that going so that they can help you with your community outreach? And do they refrain from direct sales is another criteria that could be used. Okay?
Well, I got you. All right. Well, so you've got a system here. I didn't. Yeah, good.
Yeah, this is something that I don't think a lot of agencies do, and that is once you have those criteria, to actually, whatever you choose as the criteria that's important for you, to actually prioritize them, to give them a weight, and then to assess the carriers, so that you know, if a particular criteria is the most important, but the carrier score is very low on that, that carrier is probably not going to make it to your list of carriers that you want to do business with. But I just would like agencies to consider that they could score the carriers and come up with their list.
This is terrific. I never have seen this before, a carrier score. I guess a lot of people are doing it, you know, and I've not been managing agencies, but is this common, would you think? People using it?
No, I don't think a lot of them are, you know, I don't even think a lot of agencies really have looked at their carrier selection in a long time. It kind of just happens as you go along through osmosis. You need a particular product, you need some E&S stuff, so you add this carrier, you had another carrier that's a legacy carrier you started with 25 years ago, and even though they may not be what you'd like to, who you'd like to be working with today, you just keep them, and maybe you shouldn't be keeping them. Maybe that's a drag on your productivity. So, you know, I think it behooves an agency when they're doing a new strategic plan to think through each one of these categories as if you're starting from scratch.
I love that, Donna. I think it's phenomenal. And then, of course, we come down to people.
People, yes. People are key. The strategy needs to recognize and talk a little bit about what roles do you see the agency in the next 3 to 5 years. Do you need more producers? Do you need more CSRs? Do the CSRs need to have different skills than the ones that you have today? What kind of compensation are you going to offer your producers and your CSRs? Where are they going to come from? You know, are you using enough different types of sources to recruit your talent from? Are you getting interns from colleges and universities? Are you you know, are you growing some of your own? Are you using the right recruiters, if you do use recruiters, and so on. So you need to think through those 4 things. What roles do I need? What skills do those people who fill those roles have to have? How am I going to compensate them, and where am I going to be getting them from? I don't have all the answers.
Nobody does yet.
Right, but the agency needs to talk through them.
Absolutely. Uh-oh, here's my field.
So marketing.
Yeah.
Yes, this is very key, right? The strategy under the marketing communications category has to address what is my brand. The agency has to be able to answer, what is my brand? What are the messages? By the way, I use the little Nike swish sign there just to say, okay, you know, that's the kind of impact that a brand can have, and that's why it's important for an agency.
Amazing how well it's done. One little check. I was looking at some shoes this morning. Maybe I would get that. People recognize it. Yeah, I don't know. It works. It works.
So, so what are the messages that I need to send in my marketing and communications plans and you know, vehicles? Who is my audience, and what vehicles will I use to reach that audience? You know, if you think back, George, it wasn't so long ago that most agencies didn't even have their customers' email addresses on file.
I know it.
And remember, and then they all went through this process of getting, you know, their customers' emails on file, and now it's common, but it wasn't so, you know, just in the recent past. So we need to think ahead a little bit about where technology is going, so that we can know what we need to gather now in order to be effective communicators with our customers and our potential customers.
For sure, you know that.
And
Well, go ahead, finish your point now. Well, I was going to say, what vehicles would be used? It hasn't been too long ago where agents would say to me, well, look, only half of our people maybe have email addresses. How can we reach them otherwise? And that was when we were kind of going through whether so it's much less expensive to use email and the internet and so forth. And it was much more expensive. And it was really, for those of us who were in the marketing business, we had some decisions to make because you kind of had to offer everybody something. And it wasn't any fun, I can tell you that. So go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. No, absolutely. It's a good point to make so that it carries the whole point across. But if we go to the next page, what I've tried to do, the next slide, what I've tried to do here is to really give agencies an idea of how detailed their communication and marketing plan as part of the overall strategic plan has to be. If it's not this detailed, pieces of the plan or things that they should do are going to fall by the wayside. They're not going to get done. And so while you have to talk through your messaging, absolutely, you also have to get down to the detailed nitty-gritty of what is it I'm going to do, why am I doing it, what exactly are the messages I'm going to send, to whom, by when, budget. My little chart here should probably also have a column for who's responsible in the agency for doing these
that's
things.
a good point. Yeah.
But this is the level of detail that you need to get to in order to make sure that it all gets done and it gets done in a coordinated way. The recent PIA survey was, I think, very eye-opening. In that survey, 67% of the customers they surveyed said that they would like to be contacted by their insurance company, agent, or agency every 6 months or less to inquire about changes to their life and circumstances. 63% of the customers would like to be contacted about their coverages and costs, and 73% would like to hear from their current provider or agency more often before renewal. So there is a pent-up demand or an interest in being communicated with on the part of customers, and it behooves the agency to respond to that need, right?
Absolutely. This communication marketing plan slide here is really, I don't want to make a big commercial of it. That's really what Agencies Online does. See, we sit down with the people and we plan all this, and then we consult with them on a monthly basis. And did you do this? Did you do this? And did you do this? And it's really kind of interesting. I'm gonna have to use this slide some more and pass it along. But it's really what we do, and it works and it makes sense. All right, and then sorry.
And I thought so when I was putting that slide together. I thought, wow, this really hits home with what you do. But
well, thank you.
Okay, so technology is the last major component area that I want to talk about. I am not an expert in technology, but I do know that if the strategy does not address how all of the stakeholders are going to communicate and pass data around, then the plan has not, it's not a good plan. It hasn't addressed all the areas that need to be addressed. The agency needs to think through, what is the agency system I have currently doing for me or not doing for me? How does it have to change? Do I have to change systems? How is the bridging and the communication between me and the carriers and other third parties and customers? Years ago, when you talked about technology or systems, again, I'm doing a little bit of retrospective here, all you had to think about was your own agency system. Did it help you operate or not? Then there was the whole thing about bridging better with the carrier, and then we had to add third parties because lot of commercial customers especially have ties to third-party systems that the agency needs to be able to communicate with. And then, of course, along came the customer, and the technology has to be able to communicate with the customer systems and devices. So if your strategy doesn't answer all those things, and if it doesn't address how you're ensuring data security so that you are not a victim of a cyber risk, and how you use the cloud, if it doesn't address all those things, you've not done a really thorough job with your strategy. And that's, I think, all I'm going to say about that. Unless you have some questions, George.
Well, I would have a lot of questions if we had the time, but I think what you've done here is to put things in perspective for a whole lot of agencies who don't think about this kind of thing very often. And I know it's difficult to do when you're running a business. You can't fool around with it, but I think this is a good map for people, and I think that they should use it. I would suggest that people maybe take this presentation to the next meeting that they have and go down and say, are we doing this? Are we doing this? I think you've done a really good basic. I'm going to use this both on the basic section of our Monday mornings as well as a regular one, because I think it's ideal. And then here's your contact information to get to these enterprise risk management. These I just don't know how an agency in the commercial lines could just operate by not using enterprise risk management right now. I'm a little bit prejudiced after starting listening to you and Rob Ecker and a whole lot of other people who are using this around the country or preaching it, and Scott Addis, a lot of them. And this is really good. So these are the Bibles here, you guys. They can get it there.
Well, and they could think about possibly giving these as gifts to their clients, to their customers, especially their commercial customers. Maybe not every customer, but certainly their most valued customers. It makes for a nice gift.
Good idea. That's great. And are there any more on the line? You've already got 2 here. You're probably working on the 3rd, knowing you, Donna.
I have started giving some thought to it.
I thought so. Yeah. Well, listen, this is great. I really love what you do, and you help tremendously a lot of people by doing this. And so I know we'll be in touch, and I appreciate everything that you've contributed to the industry over the years, even in Switzerland, you lucky girl. But anyhow, that's another story. So the rest of you, I'll see you again next Monday morning.